12 checkmates, from one any beginner knows to one that beats grandmasters. 2 rooks, 400 elo. The simplest mate in chess, you don't even need your king. The rooks take turns, like a ladder. One cuts a rank, rook to b7, the king backs up, and the other slams down for mate on a 8. Keep the king away from your rooks, and there's nothing to go wrong. Every one game ends in some version of this. Queen and king, 700. The queen covers every square around her, so the king can never come close. She walks him to the edge, king to a 5 leading the way, your king steps up, and she finishes beside him, mate on f7. One catch that traps even strong players. Never leave him with no move but no check. That's stalemate, an instant draw. Always give him one square to move. Rook and king, 1000. Same idea, but a lone rook can't do it. It needs your king, using the opposition. Your king facing his, forcing him back. They squeeze together, rook to h7 to start, slicing off one rank at a time until he runs out of room. Mate on b8. No king help, and he just walks free. King and pawn, 1200. Looks like a free win. Just push the pawn. It's one of the most treacherous endings in chess. The secret, proven by Philidor 3 centuries ago, the king leads, not the pawn. King to f6 first, shouldering the enemy aside, then the pawn runs to a new queen on e8 and mate on a 4. But push the pawn too early and watch it fall apart. The king slips in front, and it's stalemate on e6, a draw out of nowhere. The whole difference between winning and drawing is a single tempo, one move, one square. Get your king 2 ranks ahead of the pawn, and the win is automatic. Fall 1 square short, and it's a draw. Legal's mate. Our first real game, Paris, 1750, played by Legal himself, the teacher of the legendary Philidor. It opens with a quiet Italian setup until black pins the knight to the queen with his bishop. White plays the knight anyway, looking like a blunder, and black greedily takes the queen. Fatal mistake. Bishop to f7, check, the king is dragged into the open, and 3 tiny pieces deliver mate in the middle of the board. Knight to d5. Black was so busy taking the queen, he never saw the mate coming. They call it the legal sacrifice, and it's been catching greedy players for nearly 300 years. 2 bishops, 1500, a rare ending most club players fumble. 2 bishops sweep the whole board, controlling both colors at once, but on their own they can't trap anything. They need the king, so he drives first. King to e2, hurting the enemy back. Then the bishops close in on parallel diagonals, shrinking the box until the king is trapped in a corner. Bishop to b7, and mate on b6. Any corner works here, which makes it far easier than bishop and knight. The hard part is the waiting move. When every normal move would spoil the position, a quiet little bishop step-hands the turn back to your opponent and keeps the win alive. Smothered mate, Philidor's legacy, the single flashiest knight mate in chess, and proof nobody's safe. Even world-class Grandmaster Nigel Short walked into it against Jan Timman in 1990. The knight checks, knight to f7, the king steps to the only square it has, the knight jumps back with a double check, 2 pieces attacking at once, so the king cannot capture and must move. And it is shoved into the corner, and now the showstopper. The queen sacrifices herself, the rook is forced to take on g8, and that blocks the king's last escape. The knight returns for mate, knight to f7. The king, smothered by his own pieces. You give up your strongest piece for one reason only, to force the enemy to wall in their own king. Spot a king cornered with a knight nearby, and this pattern is always worth a look. It has decided games at every level. Boden's Mate. London, 1853, the game that named the pattern. Black castles his king to the queen side, looking perfectly safe. Then the thunderbolt. Boden throws his queen away as a sacrifice, white is forced to take on c3, and that single capture rips open the diagonal. Bishop, mate on a 3. 2 bishops crossing, the king boxed in by his own pieces. It's the cruelest mate of all, because it strikes right when the king feels safest, the very move meant to protect him. Castling tucks the king away, but it can also trap him in a cage of his own pawns. Queen versus rook, 1900. The queen's stronger, every child knows that, but actually winning is brutal. In 78, Grandmaster Walter Brown tried to win this against a computer in 50 moves, and failed. Then he studied for a whole month and beat the machine on the rematch. This is the very ending from that match. The queen hunts the rook with relentless checks, driving the black king and rook apart step by step. The rook is forced to break away from its king, and the white king pounces. King takes b7, the rook is gone. Now it's a plain king and queen mate. A check from f6 drives the king back, the king walks up to help, and the queen finishes on d7. You can never grab the rook while it shelters by its king. You check and maneuver until it's forced into the open. Bishop and knight, 2100. The ending grandmasters openly dread. The problem is geometry. A bishop and knight only control one color, so you can mate only in the corner matching your bishop. Wrong corner, no mate at all. At the 2018 World Blitz, world champion Tan Zhongyi reached this exact position and couldn't finish it, the win melting to a draw in front of everyone. Knight to d4, you slowly herd the king to the right corner, the knight leaps in, knight to h6, and the bishop mates, bishop to f6. The knight traces a strange zigzag the whole way. Chess players call it the W maneuver, because the knight's path literally draws a W across the board, and one wrong step throws it all back to the start. The Immortal game, 2300, and the most famous game ever played. London, 1851, Adolf Anderssen against Lionel Kieseritzky, the masterpiece of chess's romantic age. What makes it immortal is the sheer audacity. Anderssen throws away almost his entire army to mate with the few pieces left. He offers both rooks, bishop to d6, and the black queen goes rook hunting, capturing on a 1. He pushes a 5, ignoring the carnage. Then the famous finish, the knight crashes in, knight takes g7 with check, the king flees to d8, and Anderssen plays the immortal move, queen to f6, a queen sacrifice. Black takes the queen, but it's the final trap. Bishop to a7, checkmate, delivered by 3 minor pieces while a whole army of black material sits useless. Down almost everything on the board, and every surviving piece lands the blow. That's why it's been studied for over a century. Two knights versus pawn, 2900. The crown of the list, and it runs on a pure paradox. Two knights alone can't mate at all. The lone king always slips into stalemate. But give the enemy a single pawn, and suddenly you win, because at the critical moment that pawn gives him a move, when otherwise he'd be stalemated. The Russian composer Alexei Troitsky mapped out exactly how far back the pawn must be held. It's called the Troitsky line. The knights drive the king into the corner, knight to f4, while the pawn slowly creeps forward. Then you release the blockade and race the pawn. The knight checks, knight to f8, the pawn promotes to a queen, and on that very same move, the knights deliver mate, knight to g6. The pawn became a queen half a beat too late. The margin is so thin, even the best miss it. Anand let it slip blindfold, and Nakamura nailed it in blitz with 40 seconds left. Mapped out for over a century, and still almost impossible to play.